Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And we're having another one of these critical conversations today because I'm joined by Stephen Erikson. Hello, Steve.
Hi, how are you? Well, I know how you are, but anyways.
Well, and this is something we need to clue everyone else in on. Up until very recently, I've been sitting here in my office wearing sunglasses. And the reason is not because I think I'm too cool for school. It's because I'm having migraines again. And having the lights on makes it worse. So because of my dedication to making videos and having chats with you whenever you're available, we're going to carry on and ignore the fact that I've had to take a whole lot of medication in order to do this, and I'm not functioning at my best.
Well, and as I pointed out before you started recording, you slowing down is not necessarily a bad thing, AP.
Well, today we're going to talk about a scene from Toll the Hounds. And like a lot of the other conversations we've had, I have the text of the scene, and we're going to go through it. We're going to talk about it. And so this is spoilers for Toll the Hounds, and obviously it is going to maybe include some references back to earlier books. So for the purposes of spoilers, if anyone's interested in this is Toll the Hounds that we're talking about. And this is it chapter, I've just forgotten, I think it's chapter 4. I'll put what the actual chapter is above the video. But it is a sequence with Torvald Nom when he has found himself outmaneuvered by a moneylender and has had to break into his house to get the money to pay the moneylender off. So that's the scene that we're going to talk about. So I'll put it up on screen now. So this is actually partway through the scene. And up until now, we've had Torvald creeping through the house, listening to one of the guards have an argument with one of the other guards because he's found out that the guard has been sleeping with his wife. And
yeah, a bit of foreshadowing there. Yes.
And also at the wife's behest that she's been pursuing other people because she has needs. And he has gotten to the office of the moneylender, searched it, can't find the money, and there's one room left, which is the bedroom of the moneylender, and that's where we come into this scene.
Yeah.
Pausing at the desk to douse the lantern, waiting for his eyes to adjust to the darkness, crouching yet lower to squint at the crack beneath the bedroom door, pleased to find no thread of light. Drawing up against the panelled wood with its gold leaf insets now dull in the gloom, no lock this time, hinges feeling well oiled, he slowly worked the door open. So the first thing that I want to comment on here is we have Torvald, obviously as a burglar, as a thief. Torvald has always been a picaro. He has been this character throughout of the slightly roguish thief who's gone on all these adventures. And there's a long storied tradition of picaros. But what we have in the sequence is he's moving from light into dark. And it's described not in absolute darkness, but gloom. There is obviously ambient light somewhere that this is not darkness, but he's having to adjust to it.
Yeah. And of course, the background to all of this is he has a death sentence over his head. He's got one day to come up with the money to pay off this loan shark. And so he's in a fairly desperate state at this point. Go on.
And I was going to say, and interestingly, the loan was unfairly imposed.
Yeah.
And he didn't know about it. He went on his adventures, got waylaid, had all of those adventures with Karsa, all of those different travels, and has made his way back home and found out suddenly he owes an incredible amount of money that he never agreed to. And he is going to die. He is going to be killed unless he pays this man back.
Right. So, and all of that's delivered by the two characters, Scorch and Leth, who are going to have a role in the novel that has to take them away from the moneylender in terms of employee. So that element needs to be dealt with as well.
He slowly worked the door open. Inside, quietly shutting the door behind him. And so we get that nice separation of one paragraph ends, then we have a paragraph, basically one single sentence on its own as a paragraph. So we get this sense of creeping in slowly. This is what happened. Then he eases past the door. And it's because of that breakup of just the sentence structure, which is actually quite nice.
Well, it's a transition, right? And man, when I was in the writing programs, transitions were one of the most problematic aspects of narrative. And so, yeah, I've seen and had to deal with and had to practice all kinds of transitions. And this is a very, very straightforward transition. It's a physical movement from one place to the next, which then opens up the scene that is about to come.
So he's opened the door, gone into this bedroom, and soft breathing from the huge 4-poster bed, then a sigh. Now, he's not expecting anyone to be there.
No, or awake, even if they are, right?
Or awake. And you have to imagine his shock as, oh, someone's actually here and awake. Now, before we carry on with this, I'm thinking back to Gardens of the Moon and the scene at the very beginning with Crocus, where he breaks into Chalice's room, that we're getting a recreation of that same thing. And I don't know if you had them in Canada, but do you remember there used to be a series of ads for a chocolate, Cadbury's chocolate milk tray, and it was the James Bond-esque figure who would break into the lady's room while she was sleeping and would leave a box of chocolates with a note, and it was all because the lady loved milk tray. That there was an entire whole thing of these James Bond amorous, good-looking men breaking into people's rooms to leave them chocolate.
But no, I don't remember those. But I mean, everything about Toll the Hounds and its storylines are callbacks to Gardens of the Moon. Not everything, but almost everything. And this is another instance of a callback that echoes Crocus and Chalice. And of course, they are going to become, well, they're pretty central to a lot of things that are going to happen shortly. So.
Yeah. So then a sigh. And what I like here is everything is now being instigated by the person in this room.
Oh yeah,
she's the one in control of everything.
She is. The power dynamic is it should be made clear with the sigh. She's in absolute control of the situation. She could have screamed, for example.
And she says, "Sweet Sliverfishy, is that you?" Now, what I like about this is this wonderful moment. He's snuck into this room. He's closed the door behind him. His eyes are adjusting to the gloom. This person's there. They're looking at him.
Absolutely.
And she knows immediately,
of course,
that this is not her husband.
No,
and she has a sigh. And what I like about the sigh is it's so ambiguous. Is this a not again? Or is this a, oh, this is an opportunity? That it's not a scream. It's not a gasp. It's not anything untoward. This is, she has perceived an opportunity here. And she's married to an incredibly rich, powerful moneylender. She knows opportunity when she sees it. And
and the sigh is an indication of absolute control, right? Because she's not being loud enough to wake anybody else up or to alarm the guards or anything. This is a very, very private conversation she's about to have with this stranger in her room.
And what's great is we know that there is meant to be a guard basically just outside the office who has been sitting there and was distracted by the cat. So she knows if she raises her voice at all, at any point, that guard is going to come crashing through. Yeah. And the safety and security that she must be feeling just sitting there going, you've just broken in here. let's see what fun we can have with this.
Exactly.
A woman's husky, whispering voice, and now stirring sounds from the bed. And so we get this, she's looked up, she's seen him, and now we get this sense of moment, almost predatory, that she's getting closer, these stirring sounds from the bed, getting closer to him, as he's still standing there, basically at the doorway, going, oh crap. Yep. And this person is coming towards him. The Night Stalker this time. Oh, that one's fun. I'll keep my eyes closed and whimper lots when you threaten me to stay quiet. Hurry, I'm lying here, petrified. And so she lays out. There is no way he can threaten her. She's already done no, you can threaten me. This is what I do. I love this.
This is role playing.
She sets up this entire scenario. Completely. Torvald Nom is completely defanged in an instant.
Yeah.
She can raise her voice and summon the guard, and she's already preempted any threat by turning it into the thing that she wants.
Yeah.
And also, this is something that, that one's fun. This is something she's done before.
Yes.
She has a lot of experience of this. And you have to wonder, how many people have broken into her room in order to try and rob her husband that she has taken advantage of? And then she says, hurry, I'm lying here, petrified.
Petrified, hardly.
And you go, why hurry? What is the hurry? And she knows there's a guard outside. She knows her husband is going to come home at some point. She wants her fun before she can be caught.
Yeah. And, the someone's in my room. I mean, again, it's stating the scenario. It's laying out the parameters of how this is going to play out. But she doesn't scream it, right? It's all whispered.
But what I find interesting here is I always read that as a threat to Torvald Nom. Well, and the threat being, play along, or I will raise my voice and I will bring the guard in. Because you actually use there's an exclamation mark at the end of someone's in my room, that she starts to raise her voice. And you can see Torvald hesitate, like he has a moment of panic. Torvald Nom does not hesitate. Torvald Nom acts. That's one of the things about the sort of Picaro character that he is. And he's faced with a situation he did not expect to encounter. He was going to go in.
He's a frozen deer in the headlights at this point. Yeah.
And what I like here is truly torn between necessity and necessity. Now, I think this adds a level of ambiguity to your construction that maybe you didn't intend. But I've always read this as the necessity is he needs the money or he will be killed.
Yeah.
And now the other necessity is he has to deal with the witness or the guards will be summoned and he will be killed.
Yeah, he has to play along. Those are the two necessities.
His necessity is he needs the money, and now he has to play along with a witness.
Yeah, and probably I was too coy in just assuming that people are going to pick this up. And I could have been much, at that point, I'm still happy with basically how it plays out, but he could have been more explicit.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with this is because so much of this is framed as the way that Krupp would tell a story, because Krupp's obviously the narrator. Krupp is playful, and it's, I think sometimes authors write themselves into a situation where they go, because I have this voice, this is what I am doing, and I'm trying to stay true and consistent to it. And I think that can create unexpected ambiguities, because the voice is so real as you're doing it that you know the intention behind it.
Yeah, and Krupp is always, he's always, he will choose ambiguity to amuse himself, basically. So that kind of narrative drive is always there as well. But it's also knowing. it's knowing to the audience. And that is, that's the main power of his voice. Right?
Yeah. So then this next line, he untied his rope belt and in a hissing voice demanded, "First, the treasure. Where is it, woman?" Now, what I love about this is he starts to play along because he knows exactly what she wants. And he's starting to play along. And he is so reluctant. He's like,
and desperate. Yeah.
Where's the treasure? Because as soon as she says that, he could go, aha, grab the treasure and leave and not do anything. He doesn't want to do this.
No.
And
no, he doesn't.
It's such a role reversal. Usually in a lot of these situations, even like in the milk tray ads that I was describing earlier, it's the man is the actor. They are the person instigating action. And here we have the woman in the bed is the actor. She is in control. She is controlling the action. She is dictating what is happening. And Torvald Nom is put into this very uncomfortable position of being passive and reacting to what she wants. And you can see him try to work around this to regain control of the situation. Because first the treasure, where is it, woman? And she is having absolutely none of it. Yeah. She gasped.
That's but hold on. Just to back up. This has been consistent with Torvald throughout, every time he's almost all the major scenes he's been in. He is always the one. He's kind of like the anti-hero, right? He's kind of like Jim Rockford in the Rockford Files. That's kind of the role he's playing. So within these books. And so this is very typical of the situations that Torvald Nom would find himself in, right?
Well, if we remember when he was freeing Karsa, what they did, they just went in and slaughtered everyone. Like they went into the compound, they killed everyone. That's an option to Torvald here. We know he has a knife.
Yeah.
We know he could easily deal with the situation by killing her. Like he could just walk up and slit her throat. But he is not evil. He is not bad. He is a rogue. He is a picaro. He is beholden to his own sense of what is right and wrong rather than society's rules. But he's not necessarily an evil person.
No.
And the easiest option here is actual physical violence. Overpower her, kill her, knock her out, do physical violence to her. Yeah. And he never considers that.
Yeah. I mean, if he were to take control at this point, he might tie her up and gag her, right? But no, that's not happening, right?
So I love the fact that Torvald is just being outplayed here.
Completely.
So she gasped. That's a good voice. So the fact she's staring at this person that's not her husband, who's now speaking, and she's like, that's a good voice. Yeah, keep doing that. I like that. A new one. And again, this subtle reference to this is something that she engages in. Yeah. She has done all of this sorts of thing before. She's fully comfortable with what's going on. And then the treasure. Ah, you know where it is, you horrible creature. Right here between my legs. And it's Torvald rolled his eyes.
He rolled his eyes.
Yeah. He's just going, why, woman, why would you do that? Just tell me where the gold is and I can leave. And she's like, oh no. And I find this so funny because for someone like Torvald, who, has been involved in all of these action sequences, the freeing of Karsa, the fights that he's gotten in, the travails that they had when he was a captured slave, like all of these things are high adventure. And here we have this domestic drama where he is being completely outplayed and outwitted and moved around by someone else, and he can't think of a way out of it.
No, he can't.
And so Torvald rolled his eyes. That was his first attempt to get out of the situation without having to sleep with her. Not that one, the other one. So he tries again. And then she calls his bluff. If I don't tell you. And again, he's now forced into the position of, well, what's he going to do? His options: kill her, beat her up and sort of physically assault her, and try to gag her so that she doesn't scream in the meantime and alert the guard, or play along with it. Those are his three choices.
Well, and of course, the other thing that's being played out here, and it's in her, her dropping of phrases like "you horrible creature." This is all so cliched, and so he's stuck with a horribly cliched line like "then I will have my way with you." I mean, it's just the role-playing aspects of this is it's not good role-playing. It's really, really awkward, badly done role-playing.
Which is kind of what you expect if, people go, it's like someone arriving home going, honey, I read this article that's going to spice up our marriage. We're going to role play. And it's the whole awkwardness of, you can just imagine that whole scene of, but what do we do now? Why? Okay, so I now say this thing. That it's this absurd situation that he's discovered himself in.
Yeah, in fact, just recently, my wife and I were watching. We discovered, is it called Modern Life? I think that series on Netflix. Modern Life.
Might be Modern Life. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Well, the husband and wife, the two principal characters, they do role playing in a bar, and it's some of the funniest scenes you'll ever see anywhere, because they're both pretending to accidentally meet each other in this bar, and he's supposed to be a salesman from somewhere and all the rest. And it's just it's side splitting stuff, and this is basically the same kind of thing, but years earlier, obviously.
So, and if I don't tell you, then I will have my way with you.
Exactly.
And
yes.
You can hear the awkwardness of this whole exchange, because he's just going like, what do I do? And then she comes out with, oh, I say nothing, please. And the reason I highlighted please here, please, I think, is really important in this sentence, because, oh, I say nothing. That's what's sufficient for her response. What's the word please for in this sentence? And that's her going, come on, keep more. You have to do this. Mm-hmm. This is her encouragement to Torvald, because he's showing some reticence here.
She notices, yes.
And so now we have Torvald's response, what he's thinking about this. Damn, he sure messed that one up.
Yeah.
Then he just goes, I could, if I'd been smarter, I could have found my out. There was no way she'd not know he wasn't who he was pretending to be. So he's cottoned on to the fact that she knows that he is not her husband. He's finally realized this, but he needs to play into her fantasy role play that she's created, because clearly she's done this sort of thing before. This is something she does. So he has to play along with it. And this, I think, is actually having Krupp as narrator give the clue to the reader. Like, you have to be laughing at this, because this is a silly scene where Torvald has been outplayed, that you actually are flagging up. And it's one of those, I think sometimes you do, where you add almost like an authorial insert, which on a technical level is one of those ones that we could call a mistake, because you're not meant to break narrative immersion to feed information to the reader.
But I did so throughout this entire novel.
And you used Krupp as the frame to do that, because we know Krupp is telling the story.
Yeah.
So there was no way that she'd not know he wasn't who he was pretending to be, even when that someone was pretending to be someone else. And it's
farcical, right? It's farcical.
The absurdity of it. I'm not who I'm meant to be, even when who I'm meant to be is pretending to be someone else. It's one of those ludicrous situations. And he then thinks of how to solve this. And one of the things I keep coming back to is, like, he has a knife.
Mm-hmm.
He has ways to solve this.
Yeah. And
the way to solve it is just to kill her. And given the brutality and violence in fantasy, would any reader blink an eye? that Torvald Nom broke in, there was a witness, and unfortunately had to kill her in order to steal the money. I think
well, I would hope they blink at that. I mean, but who knows, right?
But weirdly enough, I think this is, people are so more readily willing to accept extreme murder and violence and killing in fantasy than anything that has to do with sex and intimacy or extramarital affairs, because that is getting into a taboo area of a lot of Western cultures where we don't talk about sex. We don't talk about different ways to have relationships, that we feel uncomfortable with it. In part, a puritanical mindset or a very conservative Christian morality comes into play that has informed a lot of the culture. So he then, get on your stomach, now on your hands and knees. Yes, like that. And then, you're worse than an animal.
I know, again, really bad lines.
It's playing it up. It's dialing it all up to 11 because sorry, I keep laughing. It's such an absurd scene.
And it's fully intended to be absurd. Yeah.
So that Torvald paused at the foot of the bed. Worse than an animal? What did that mean? And again, we have him. He is so flummoxed and perplexed by this entire situation that she is creating, that this is not what he is into.
Yeah.
Shaking his head, he climbed onto the bed. Well, here goes nothing. There's a good Han Solo line for you.
Pretty much, yeah.
A short time later, Sliverfishy, the new elixir, gods, it's spectacular. Why, I can't call you Sliverfishy anymore, can I? More like a salmon charging upstream. Oh, and you can just imagine, again, Torvald rolling his eyes. Yeah. This has to be the least sexy, the least seductive sequence he has ever been involved in. But clearly, she is into it. This is her jam. And
absolutely.
One of the lines that we have is, you shouldn't shame other people's kinks. This is her thing. She likes it, and she is throwing herself into it with wild abandon. And I believe another expression is, you go, girl, you get yours. So Torvald, once again, trying to keep things back on his mission. The treasure, or I'll use this knife. The knife he has had with him the entire time. And he pressed the cold of the dagger against the outside of her right thigh.
Yeah.
So he even chooses an innocuous place. He doesn't want to do any violence. And he chooses this innocuous place on the outside of her leg instead of her throat, or across the femoral artery, or up to her eye, or anything like that.
No, of course not.
It's kind of, right, and now, where's the treasure?
Yeah.
She gasped again. Under the bed. Don't hurt me. Keep pushing, damn you. Harder. This one's going to make a baby. I know it. This time, a baby.
Yeah.
And this suddenly changes the scene a lot for me.
Completely. Yeah.
She goes, the money's under the bed. Just the way that she would pay a gigolo, a prostitute.
It's transactional at this point. Yeah.
Here's the money on the side table. You've done your job. You're going to get paid. Don't worry, but I need to get mine. And what she wants here, while it was all this sort of farcical thing, she is desperate to have a child.
Yeah.
And this is where something that is a farcical, picaresque, absurdist sex comedy scene suddenly ties into a lot of what the rest of the book is about.
Yep.
And one of the things that why I think this line is so important, she's desperate to have a baby. She cannot have a baby with her husband.
No.
And she desperately wants a child. So she has been resorting to things like this
Mm-hmm.
to try to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she
And
does.
we'll come back to this, but the scene immediately following this scene is about Harlow, and it's from
Mm-hmm.
Harlow's perspective as an unwanted child, as a child produced from rape, and it's told from his perspective. And here we have the antithesis of that, of someone so desperate to have a child. She is willing to engage in all of these things. This isn't just about having fun.
Mm-hmm.
He desperately wants this baby. And it is such a strong contrast to Harlow's fate and Harlow's life being the product of the opposite.
Yeah, with the very next scene in this, the very next scene is where the juxtaposition is put in place, and that is intended to call back to obviously Memories of Ice and Harlow's origins, if you will. And so again, it's not accidental. It's a deliberate placement for sure.
And then we actually see a change to Torvald's attitude here. He went from rolling his eyes and being forced into this situation, and now he did his part anyway, feeding his coins into the temple's cup and all that, and may her prayers guide her true into motherhood's blissful heaven. He develops a level of empathy for her in this line, whereas before he was rolling his eyes at her. He wasn't respecting her because of what she was making him go through. But it's this sudden thing about realizing that other people have
their lives.
But it's also, they put up a front, and that front is sometimes there to disguise something desperate within them.
A need,
And this need that she had, he had thought that this was all some silly sex game that she did because she was a bored housewife. And now he realized that there's actually a desperate need and desire underneath it that had nothing to do with that. And it crashes and breaks apart our illusions, because we create images and impressions of people, and we almost always forget that they have an interior life, that they might be having a bad day. They're not always an asshole, but every time before they meet you, they have to go to this other thing, and that always puts them in a bad mood. So you've always thought they were an asshole, but it's because they're always coming out of the same meeting where they are belittled by someone else. That when you know that, it changes how you read and how you interpret the character. And that's it's one of the aspects of character writing that you have put consistently into the entire series.
And the tone changes in this paragraph, right? As you point out.
She collapsed onto the bed, groaning, while he backed off, knelt on the cold wooden floor and reached under the bed, knuckles skinning against a large, low, long box. Groping, he found one handle and dragged it out. So, like the good prostitute that he is, he's now been paid off by the customer.
Transactional sex.
And then she moans. And now this, I think, is again a level of ambiguity, because this line that she gives, you have to understand the mentality of a character like this. She moaned, "Oh, don't start counting again, darling, please. You ruin everything when you do that." This could be read as she thinks it's her husband. If you were just paying attention to the surface level of information and ignoring everything else. In the same way that when someone says to you, when they break up with you, it's not you, it's me. And, on a surface level, it's not you, it's me. Oh, well, clearly, they're admitting their fault. And anyone in that situation goes, no, what they are saying is not what they mean.
No.
And so she has to say, "Oh, don't start counting again, darling, please. You ruin everything when you do that." And she's trying to lie in the afterglow of this. And the person she has treated as a prostitute has already gone to get the money. There's no even taking a moment And it's that frustration. But she keeps up the illusion that it's her husband because propriety must be met. You must maintain your excuse. If she admits in this moment that that was not her husband, that she full well knows is not her husband, they've just had sex. She's seen him. She's felt his body. She's smelled him. She's heard his voice. She knows it isn't her husband. But,
yeah, that's the other thing that astonishes me. I mean, maybe it's because I've been married for 35 years, but you would know if a stranger crawled into your bed. You would know, regardless of positioning, you would know.
Yeah, so. But it's the smell of their body, the feel of their body, the sound of their breathing, the rhythm of their breathing, how they move. You cannot. It is obvious she knows it's not her husband.
Yeah, elixirs be damned. I mean, she knows.
Yeah. So why does she say this? And it's because she has to maintain that facade. This baby is going to be her baby with her husband. She has to maintain that because he's the money lender and he's obviously quite cruel. He's obviously not a particularly nice guy. And so this is all playing into that fantasy that she's created for herself.
Yeah.
Not counting, woman, stealing, stay where you are, eyes closed, don't move. And then it just sounds silly now, you know that. Yeah. That she's sort of gone, right, we've finished the whole role play thing. I know you're stealing the money. I know you're getting paid. That's fine. Like, just go and do it. You don't need to play up to the role play anymore. I know what's going on. So again, we have this, drop insert of an acknowledgement that she knows it's not her husband. Again, being reaffirmed here. Then Torvald says the dumbest thing imaginable.
Yeah, he does.
Shut up, or I'll do you again. And she's like, ooh. Her immediate response is, what was that elixir again? Okay, I'm ready. She's gone, I'm ready for round 2. Let's go. And he's like, oh, you can almost imagine his like Homer Simpson moment of that was entirely the wrong thing to say. He prized open the lock with the tip of the dagger. Inside, conveniently stored in burlap sacks tagged with precise amounts, a fortune of gems, jewels, and high counsels. He quickly collected the loot. You are counting. And there's an exclamation mark that she's starting to raise her voice. And this is the threat. Each time that she's threatened him by raising her voice to potentially alert the guards, you've signaled it. You ruin everything when you do that. Exclamation mark. You are counting. Exclamation mark. Play into what is going on and everything will be fine. But if you don't play along with my fantasy and what I want, I am calling the guard.
Yeah, implicit threat. Yeah.
I warned you. He climbed back onto the bed, looked down, and saw that promises weren't quite enough. Gods below, if you only were. Listen, he said, I need more elixir in the office. Don't move. And it's this wonderful, I need more elixir, full stop. In the office, full stop. Don't move. He's suddenly come up with his excuse that fits the role play, that gets him out of the room, and he can escape.
Yep.
And it's those short sentences as his brain suddenly figures it out. And she then says, I won't, I promise. And this is her tacit acknowledgement of, I won't tell on you. You've given me what I want. I will let you go. You keep what you have stolen because it's only money. And what I want is a baby. You've fulfilled your role. Now go. And she basically comes out to say to him, I won't tell on you. I promise.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, like he does have a knife. He is actually an intruder. He hurried out, crept across the outer room and paused at the doors to the corridor to press his ear against the panel. Softly, the slither click of bamboo knitting needles. And that's it. The guard is bored and he's sitting knitting outside the room.
Yeah.
And that is how close the guard has been to this entire sequence. Torvald slid the dagger into its scabbard, reversed grip, opened the door, looked down at the top of the guard's hairy head, and swung hard. The pommel crunched. The man sagged in his chair, then folded into a heap at the foot of the chair. The cat was waiting by the library door.
Right. Now, this is just a complete aside. That's probably not relevant to anyone but me. But when I was in my undergraduate writing program, one of my instructors, Bill Valgerson, had us go through and deconstruct a number of short stories. And one of them was Hemingway's Cat in the Rain. And it was a real eye-opener because I think it was one of the first stories we touched on. So I was completely basically ignorant of the notion of subtext and symbolism in fiction. And just roughly, it's a very short story. And it's about a married couple in a hotel room in a foreign city. And she's looking down into the courtyard and she sees a cat. And they have a conversation. And that is basically the entire story. But then when Bill Valgerson started discussing, well, what does this mean? What's the cat in the rain? And it was some other student who just said, well, the cat in the rain is seduction. That's what the whole story is about. And this is what the cat represents. So for the scene, it has to close with the cat in the corridor, because to me, that's my acknowledgement that everything that's preceded here is all framed by that notion of seduction. And it is seduction. It is her seduction of Torvald, right? So that's how I kind of closed that thing out, by just a private callback to that story, Cat in the Rain.
And it's funny, when we started having these chats that we were actually recording, you'd mentioned that Hemingway story before, and actually I remembered the inclusion in this scene.
Oh, nice.
And
nice.
I went, that's why it's there. It had never twigged before. You'd spoken about how important that Hemingway story was for that writing class.
Yeah.
The cat I hadn't interpreted that way.
No,
but
and nor could you be expected to, or any other reader to be expected to. But for me, it's what leaves me satisfied at the end of the scene, that I knew exactly what I was up to here, and this is how I signposted for myself and wrap it up at that point. Yeah.
Because I suppose I closed down the sharing of the screen a little early, because the one thing I wanted to point out with the end of that is,
oh, sharing the screen, yes. Okay.
Yeah, because it's the fact that Torvald strikes the guard and knocks him out. Violence was always an option all the way through.
Always.
And he knocks the guard out, but again, doesn't kill the guard. Like, this is someone we have seen kill people.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's you've taken pains here to construct a sequence in which Torvald doesn't harm anyone.
Not only that, but there's the other detail, of course, is he can't get it up a second time, because none of this was, there's no turn on for him on this one. It is literally necessity. So, yeah, he can't do it. And so that's why he has to come up with this, absurd excuse about some elixir, presumably. Cialis, I guess, the Rujistan equivalent.
Malazan Viagra.
Yeah, pretty much. So.
But for me, it's such an interesting sequence, because Krupp as narrator is such because of his absurdity, because of his love of storytelling, and we see it when Hood enters the realm, that we get a whole sequence of short stories of these little vignettes, and some are poignant and some are ludicrous. That of all of the books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, this one is probably the most about the intimate part of people's lives.
Yes.
That this is about going behind that veneer of the public acts that they commit and seeing into who people are. The revelation of Traveller, the going into Dragnapur, the investigation of the Teast Andy, finally getting insight into them and how melancholic their society is and how they have this lack of drive.
Even Calor, right?
even callow.
Yeah,
But also
and this is the thing, you know, if you're to ask why is that scene in there? What is the purpose of a farcical scene in this book? And my response would be, this novel is about grief, and grief, as you know, you being Irish and having attended wakes are well aware that there is a mix of celebration, there's a mix of tears and laughter in a wake. And this book is a kind of ongoing wake. And so those moments need to be there. There needs to be at some point, you know, with Hood's travel through the city or with this scene, but there needs to be just a nod to the absurdity of death itself, which may sound cold, but it isn't. Take it from me, it's not. And these things all need to be touched on, and Krupp knows this, because Krupp, above all else, is capable of both the absurdity and the tears. And that is why he is the driving voice and the driving force behind this story.
And that, you know, the line that you used of a breath that begins in love and ends in grief.
Yeah. That
death is such a tragic part of our lives, such a necessary part of our lives. And you're right. Like, I distinctly remember, actually, it was my best friend's wake, and people standing around and tears running down your face. We were so shocked and traumatized by his passing. And then 50 seconds later, someone would start, do you remember when? And they would tell a story. And now there were tears running down our face again, but it was tears of laughter, that we were cracking up at the ridiculous, absurd things that our friend had done. And it was celebrating his life and showing how much we loved him.
Yeah.
And that love is expressed in laughter and in tears, in the highs and lows of that emotional roller coaster. And Krupp is telling this story of a tragedy. And we know that from the very beginning. In the prologue, he is recounting the tragedy of what happened. And in order to do that, he already knows how it's happened. This is not happening in real time. Krupp is retroactively telling the story. So he's at a later date, he's looking back on these events and relaying them to Fisher and Krull.
And here's the key. The reason for why this scene of Torvald stealing the coins is also a scene of sex is because basically what Krupp is saying is, here is an instance where, as you discover at the end of that scene, where new life is born, potentially. And so it is an answer to the death, if you see what I mean. It's an answer to it. And then, having sort of opened that door, I have to then go to Harlow, because this now harkens back to the scene in Memories of Ice when Stani is raped by soldiers. Now, if that was just a, quote, fridging scene for Grunthal, then that rape would have had no other consequences apart from the physical, or rather the spiritual, emotional trauma and physical trauma of the rape. But no, all of that is actually answered in this book, so that the consequences are what is actually important. And those consequences are a child born of rape. And I cannot use Stani's point of view on this one, because I cannot step into the skin of somebody who is experiencing, you know, every day seeing an offspring produced out of violence. Right? I mean, it's not for me to do. But Harlow, as the innocent in this scenario, is the one I have to actually go with. And so, without what happened to Stani in Memories of Ice, there is a domino effect that is integral to Toll the Hounds, because this is where I'm finally getting to the point of, here are the consequences of that act of violence. And those consequences have left 3 people deeply confused, traumatized, and conflicted. And so when Gruntle is driven away by Stani, he's not, in this book, he's not driven away by the guilt he feels and for his failure to protect Stani in Memories of Ice. He's driven away by Stani's dysfunctional relationship with her son Harlow. And she named him Harlow, which is a callback to the original trio of caravan guards. And that is what drives him out of the city. And that's important for the later books, that he has to be driven out of the city. And then the question then is, well, with Harlow, without Harlow, so much of this novel, in terms of the callbacks to Gardens of the Moon, could not take place. Because Harlow leads to Murillo and his storyline, through Stani as well. That storyline leads to Crocus's storyline, where Crocus takes on the role, curiously, of not only Rallick Nom from Gardens of the Moon. In fact, his final act against Gorlas Viticus is a mirroring of Rallick Nom and Turban Orr in the first book. And they have that initial clash when Rallick comes up behind Crocus Cutter and almost gets killed, which is the foreshadowing of what's coming. So it's not only Murillo, he doesn't not only takes on, Crocus not only takes on the role of, steps into the shoes of Rallick Nom, which Rallick Nom never wanted to see happen. He also, Crocus also finds himself in the role of Murillo with Chalice, because he is now, the other man in a relationship.
He's the dandy who's sleeping
with a married woman, yeah, who happens to be Chalice, which is then ties back to Gorlas Vitica, the mine owner, and so without Harlow, none of these other things can be put into their proper place, and then of course the necessity for the whole storyline with Chalice and Crocus taking on, in a sense, Murillo's role. I mean, in Gardens of the Moon, I could not have been more obvious in naming Chalice, right? I mean, she was going to be unattainable. She was going to be the thing he was striving for. And in Gardens of the Moon, she chooses the other man, as it were, right? The other hero, quote unquote. And by the time we get at this point with the 8th book, again, I am dealing with the consequences of the choices and the decisions and the actions that have happened in previous books to various characters. I'm not going to let them go. And so she is in a terrible situation, and she finds in Crocus her out, her means to get out. But that fails because Crocus cannot do what Murillo did throughout his life. And look at the end of Murillo, right? So basically, when Chalice, and this is spoilers for the book, when Chalice, she has that glass globe, doesn't she, that she brings up to the top before, yeah. And what's in the globe? It's a moon, is it not?
The moon, yeah.
It's the moon. Okay, so think in terms of Crocus and his relationship with any kind of story involving the moon, which was unattainable, while it stays within the glass. And this is why, just as Lady Simtal in Gardens of the Moon, when all is lost, she takes her life, the callback or the call forward, in this case, is Chalice. She repeats literally what Lady Simtal kind of does. But I could not have Chalice, even though she's named Chalice, fall to her death and shatter, right? I mean,
it would have been a wee bit obvious.
A bit obvious. So she's carrying this thing. It shatters. And by shattering, it frees the moon. And the freeing of the moon allows Crocus to leave the city to go to you-know-who, right? This is why all of these things are all put in place. Meanwhile, Scorch and Left are out of their job because, you know, the money's been paid off, and they end up in an estate that is also very important to the story in terms of the mysterious lady who's running the estate, who happens to be Vorkin. So all of these things had to be put into place, and none of that could have happened without Harlow. Harlow is the key to the entire thing.
And one of the things that I find fascinating about Toll the Hounds that typically we don't talk about is how much of it is actually focused on and investigates complicated relationships. You have Fisher's relationship with Lady
Envy.
Lady Envy. So Fisher and Lady Envy, that's a non-conventional relationship. We had this scene with Torvald Nom, and I can never remember the moneylender's name.
No, me neither.
Krupp mentions it later on. But it began with that whole sequence of Murillo sort of seducing the older widow.
Yes.
She's passed out and then ends up sleeping with the daughter and getting stabbed. This Crocus
That's
and
the
Chalice.
key, though. He gets stabbed.
Yeah, but Crocus and Chalice, because again, she's trapped in a loveless marriage, and her husband is saying, have your fun with my friends. I'll use you for political favors and you can actually sleep with them. Because I don't want to sleep with you. We even the relationship between Picker and Bland in Krull's Bar. So much of this book is about the complicated, messy nature of human relationships and how they run the absolute gamut from things that you may personally go, yeah, that's normal, to something that you may personally go, that's really weird, but to that person, that is normal. That is what life is made up of. And Samar Dev and Karsa, even the relationships within the Teast, like so much of this book is about a slice of life, about understanding. If you want to understand grief, you have to understand the variety of what life means and what it encompasses. And that, I think, because of Krupp's focus, he wants to celebrate life in all its forms, to celebrate all the different kinds of love, and to mourn the loss of those things, to talk about the highs and lows, the comedies and tragedies that make up existence. That is Krupp's focus as a storyteller.
All the way through, yeah. Which is why it's a cipher for the series, because it's I mean, Krupp is my stand-in in this instance in a more direct fashion than anywhere else in the series, but you have to run the gamut. You have to, if you're going to explore the human condition, you need to go everywhere. You need to get into the places that are uncomfortable, and lay them out and just present them. And these are the things. This is part of our experiences as human beings. And so all of those emotions need to be run through. They all need to be experienced. And, you know, whatever you take away from it is what you take away from it. But it was certainly the thing that you know, was the prime driver for the Malazan Book of the Fallen, for sure.
Yeah. But we started out with a comedic scene and ended up talking about something very, very dark and serious, which, if you think about it, is quite often at the heart of a lot of comedy.
It is. There's often a broken heart at the heart of comedy. Yeah.
But Steve, thank you very much for joining me on this.
Oh, thank you.
And for those of you still watching, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I will see you in the next one.